Okay, well, hello, everybody. Yes, it is cooler. You can see I'm still in a sweater. I'm still trying to warm up. It's cold up there, but you learn to live with it, is all I can say. As my daughter and I went to Churchill, Manitoba last November, we both were very eager to see the polar bears while they're still here. You know that they are an endangered species. And they were absolutely fantastic to see these bears out in their natural habitat. So, is it all ready?
All you gotta do is just press right and left arrow key.
Okay. So here is where we are. You can see I've got on and please excuse the slides. I still don't have quite all the use of my right hand and arm. So this is not really a good slide presentation. It's more a presentation of photos. So here you can see how far it is from Dallas to get all the way to Churchill, Manitoba. However, it's one of those things where you can get there from here, but you can't really get there from here. You have to take a circuitous route to get there. Neither I nor my daughter could find direct flights to Winnipeg. Everything for Churchill centers around Winnipeg. So you have to get to Winnipeg. I had to go through Toronto, then to Winnipeg. My daughter went through Minneapolis, then to Winnipeg. And then coming home, she went back through Toronto and Atlanta to get back to Austin. So it's not that easy to get there. But we're going to talk about, oops, it's not advancing, Edward. I need to use the mouse.
No, it wasn't focused. There you
go. Okay. All right. So there's one of the polar bears. They're beautiful animals. And I really wanted to see them while they're still there and to watch them in their native habitat and see their behaviors, which are really fascinating to see. Now, polar bears are Ursus maritimus, and I hope I pronounced that correct. But basically, it means marine bear. Oops.
Get your face.
Oh, it's okay. All right. So it's a marine bear, and it's classified as a marine mammal, the same as dolphins and whales and narwhals. So even though the bears spend quite a bit of time on land, they spend most of their time out on the ice floes, or they're swimming in the waters. Their status right now is vulnerable because there are not that many of them left. There may be worldwide 22 to 31,000 bears left. In the Churchill area, which is one of there are several areas where the bears congregate. Churchill is one of them, and there are approximately 900 bears at Churchill. So if you're going to live in Churchill, you have to take precautions. Now, these are big bears. They're 6 to 9 feet long. The males can weigh from 800 to 1,500 pounds. The females weigh from 400 to 900 pounds. Most of the bears that you're going to see, these are photos that I took. They have not eaten anything since July. They are gathering at Churchill, waiting for the ice to form over Hudson's Bay. They do not eat on land. They only eat when they're out on the ice floes or in the sea, because their diet consists of seals. The ring seals is the most popular food for them. There are, okay. They will eat other marine mammals. And in fact, I was reading about a colony in Greenland that lives on the southeast corner of Greenland. They are big into eating walruses, and they have found a way to catch the walruses and eat them while they're on land. As you know, there are mountains in Greenland. So they will climb up the side of one of these mountains, and they will push boulders down the mountain to have them land and kill the walruses. Then they go back down and have walruses. Yeah. They're smart. The largest recorded polar bear weighed 2,200 pounds. And the oldest bear in the wild is a 32-year-old female in James Bay, Canada. And there are 5 countries around the world with polar bears, all around the Arctic Circle: US, Canada, Russia. You'll find them in Greenland and in, let me see, the Scandinavian countries. So you've got Norway, Sweden, Finland. So they're in the high Arctic, and that's where they live. They don't come much farther south than that. Now, if you're going to see the polar bears, you have to start in Winnipeg, as I said. So I went early because I'd never been to Winnipeg, so I wanted to know what it was about. I wanted to see what was there. There is a Friendship Force Club in Winnipeg, so maybe we can work something out with them sometime and go visit them, and then get to go on up to see the polar bears. To get to Churchill from Winnipeg, you have 2 ways to get there. You can fly, or you can take a train. There's a train that goes 2 days a week from Winnipeg to Churchill. And that's a freight train, which brings in supplies. So it's not going to be really luxurious, but it will get you there if you want to go. If you go with a group like I did, you'll go on a chartered aircraft. Winnipeg is a fascinating city. It's when they first started building it, I mean, the area has been occupied for thousands of years. It has always been a meeting place for the indigenous people. And for thousands of years, they met. There are 2 rivers that meet there in Winnipeg: the Red River, and then this one, excuse my pronunciation, Assinniboine River. Because these rivers come there, there's a lot of water that's going to be coming down from the Arctic as the snow melts in the spring. Winnipeg is known for flooding. So all around Winnipeg, you will see markers of how high the water was. I mean, they talk about these floods. Oh, this was the flood of such and such, and this was the flood of this. They now have what they call the Big Ditch, which is supposed to help them control the flooding. And it's a ditch, that's what they call it. Between the river and the city. Since they put in the Big Ditch, they haven't had any flooding, but they're not saying it's never going to flood again. This has been a trading center for Aboriginal people even before the Europeans arrived. And then when the Europeans came, they built Fort Rouge in 1738. Then in the early 1800s, the Hudson's Bay Company started operating out of Winnipeg. That was for part of their trading with especially the fur trade. But the Hudson's Bay Company also brought in Scottish settlers to come in. They were farmers for the most part. And it became the gateway to the West. And there are a little under 900,000 people that live in Winnipeg now. As you go around the city, you'll see some really beautiful buildings, because at the turn of the 1900s, Winnipeg was scheduled to be the financial center of Canada and of North America, because Canada was building the Trans-Canadian Railroad, and Winnipeg is right in the middle of Canada. So that they were expecting it to really grow and grow, but it didn't happen. You'll see some fantastic Art Deco buildings there because they were preparing and they were going all out. At that time, there were more millionaires in Winnipeg than in any other part of Canada and in most of the US. Now, here's probably the most well-known citizen of Winnipeg. That's Lieutenant Harry Colburn. At the beginning of World War, that's a World War I uniform, as you can see. He was originally from Winnipeg. And apparently at that time, it was a very popular pastime to get wild animals as cubs or when they're young and keep them as pets. So Lieutenant Colburn got this little bear cub, and he just became very attached to him. He was called up to go to World War I. And when he was called up, of course, he couldn't take his bear with him. Well, he couldn't take him to the war, but he took him to London. Now, how the Canadian Army allowed him to take a bear with him to London, I have no idea how that happened. But he took the bear. When he was subsequently assigned to France, well, the bear could not go. So he donated the bear. He left the bear with the London Zoo. And the children in London came to see this bear, and they loved him. Now, the bear had been in captivity for so long that he was very tame. And I can't believe that they did this either, but that was then, this is now. Children could come to the zoo and they would be allowed to ride on the bear's back. And among the children that came was a little boy named Christopher, and he came with his father, A. Milne. So you see where this is going. That is Winnie the Pooh. Well, actually, he was called Winnie. Winnipeg is his full name, called Winnie for short. But there he is with the first man who owned him. Now, there is a book which is available there, Winnie the Bear, and it's the story behind Winnie the Pooh. So if you're interested in that, it might be something that you might want for you to read or for your grandchildren to read. Okay, now you may be wondering why Winnipeg didn't become the financial capital of North America. Because the Panama Canal opened at the same time. So once the Panama Canal opened, all of the trade started going around the canal on boats rather than across land on the trains, because it's cheaper to ship freight that way. So unfortunately, Winnipeg fell to the Panama Canal. I went to, my daughter and I went to Fort Wythe, which is just outside Winnipeg. It's a large nature area that's been preserved. And they keep a small herd of bison. They have 20 to 25 bison that they keep there. But they also do a lot of programs. We do programs on climate change and on the ecology of the Winnipeg area. So as we walked around, we got a little tour there. And so it's a cute little squirrel, and there are birds all around. Another little squirrel. Now you're going to see a lot of this plant. That is willow. I know that doesn't look like the willow that we usually have, but that's willow. And you will note that it has a red tint to it. So that's the way you can sometimes tell some of these animals, because they'll have that pink tint to them. That's just another photo in that area. And that's just a little turtle that was there. Then going around the town, this is one, I'm not going to show you a lot there, but this I thought was interesting. It's the Basilica of St. Boniface. And there it is. And you're looking there for the rose window. And it's a very unusual window there because there's nothing there. That was the cathedral. The town is really divided on the English side and the French side. So this is on the French side. So this is from the front of the cathedral. Then when you walk up to it, you see its walls. The original cathedral burned. So rather than building it back as it was, they kept the walls that remained in place after the fire. And that is the new basilica, which is now surrounded on at least 3 sides by the walls of the former basilica. And I thought it's very interesting. We've done architectural tours here, for people that come in, and we actually did that a few years ago. So I thought this was an interesting architectural view. This was one of my favorite places in Winnipeg, and this is the Human Rights Museum. Originally, it was supposed to be a Holocaust museum for Canada. So they put it in Winnipeg. It's the middle of the country. But they wanted to do more with it, and they got some donations, some very large donations, and they turned it into a human rights museum. And it's a fantastic building. You can see, again, the modern architecture. There's an elevator that goes up to the top, so I can't pass up an elevator or getting to the top. So there's a tower. This is a photo from the top of the Human Rights Museum, and that's looking back over downtown Winnipeg. The building with the dome is their Grand Central Station, and then our hotel is right behind it. It's one of the old railroad hotels. And then this is another view. This is looking back over to the French side of Winnipeg, and I'm not sure that would include St. Boniface, but that might. Okay. This is some of the scenes inside the museum. I'll go through this fairly quickly because it's not really what we're discussing today. But I spent almost over half a day in there. I love museums, and I really enjoyed this one. So there are about 10 floors, and every floor is dedicated to a different topic on human rights. One of the major areas for Canada, as we've all been reading, is how they have treated the Indigenous people. So there's a huge display there, and I do have a few photographs on that I was going to show you. There are no stairs. It's ramps that take you from floor to floor. And the lights are set so that it illuminates the stone on all of those ramps. And whenever you see them, you usually see several ramps at once. And this is just another exhibit. Then this garden was quite interesting. It's an area for meditation. And there's the pond and the rocks and the plants. And it is very soothing and calm if you go through that garden. That was on about the 4th or 5th floor. And here we're looking down. I think this is looking down on the main floor at that point. I'm sorry, I can't see. I can't turn my neck to see it. This is one of the touching exhibits. One of the areas of contention with the Indigenous people are the women that are disappearing. Of course, we have that here too. The women are disappearing and nobody's heard from them. And the Indigenous people are claiming they can't get the authorities to help them look for these women. So they have these, you'll see these in other places, these red dresses, which are supposed to represent a woman who has disappeared. And this was, and I don't have her name, this was a Black woman who kind of broke the barrier, the racial barrier in Canada. And she now appears on that $10 or the 10 loonie bill. That's a sculpture that hangs down several stories inside the museum. Now, this is outside the museum along the river. And this is an area that was the meeting ground for the Indigenous people and the traders. And so there are a number of sculptures and there that represent that. Now, we're going to Churchill. And you want to know whether it was cold? Well, yeah, it was cold. However, we were warm. The tour company gave us heavy parkas and heavy boots. And when my daughter and I got dressed, because we got all our layers on, we had at least 3 or 4 layers on. And then we put our boots on and it was like, we can't walk. It's like, I can't move. I can't pick up my feet. And then that we put the parkas on and they were the big, heavy, bulky ones too. So we did not get cold. They kept us warm. This is the sign that's the entrance to Churchill. Need to move so I can see what the photos are because I can't turn my neck that for you. So I kept waiting for us to stop because you always have to get the photo with the sign of where you are. I always photograph signs. So we finally stopped and we were in the middle of a blizzard when we stopped here. And our guide says, I'm not sure I'm going to let you off the bus. And we're like, we have to get off the bus. We all have to get that photo. And she says, well, there had been a polar bear sighting behind those rocks and there are willows growing all around there. And there's a bear back there. So I'm not sure that I'm going to let you off. And we're like, oh gosh, okay. So anyway, I could finally get that photo. There's our guide, all like 5'4", 5'3" of her, maybe 110 pounds, and she's going to protect us from the polar bear. So you see the weapons of choice there. She has a pair of binoculars because she's always looking around, where's the, you can't see them. I mean, it's hard to see them in that, but she's searching for them. Then if she sees them, you see that whistle around her neck. She says, if I blow this whistle, run to the bus as fast as you can. And I'm thinking a stampede, we're all going to run over each other. Yeah, and then the weapon that she's going to use to keep it away from us is the flare. Now, the bears come into the town, but they have a polar bear patrol. So you'll see signs all over the town. That one was a funny one. The others are not funny. They're meant to be serious. So here's some instructions for you. This was in our hotel in case we needed information about what to do and to be aware of the bears. Then these signs are posted everywhere in town where there could be bears. That is even on the hand sanitizer dispenser on our bus. You can't get away from those little signs. And that is the number to call the Polar Bear Patrol. The Polar Bear Patrol is these two guys in their 70s who come out and chase the bears out of town. Now, they're protected, so they don't want to kill the bears. Of course, this is a big economic benefit to Churchill. It is a tourist town, after all. So they come with their weapons, which are fireworks. Now, if you go to YouTube and you can find some videos of the Bear Patrol chasing bears out of town. They'll set off these Roman candles. There are fireworks everywhere. They don't want to kill them. They just want to get them out of town and away from people. But look at some of the videos were really quite interesting. They're the only carnivorous bears. So many animals, bears will eat both plants and animals, but most bears are herbivores except for the polar bears. And their meal of choice is ring seal. And if they can't get a ring seal, they'll go for some other kind of seal or a walrus or whatever animal that they can find. Once they're on the land in the summer, they may eat, algae and berries. So they're really kind of referred to as hyper carnivores because but the polar bear's diet is 70% meat. And they can burn through over 12,000 calories in a day, which is a female having to eat either one large adult seal, three small adult seals, 19 newborns every week for just half to maintain their body mass. Yeah. Now I'm just going to show you around the town. This is a sculpture that was of a bear. It was along the main street of town. When you fly into Churchill, you get to the airport and there's a long runway. So we get the runway and we just roll and roll and roll. It was like, when are we going to stop? There's got to be a terminal up here somewhere. Well, the airport is at the site of a former military base. And that military base is no longer active, but it still has this airport with this long runway in the facilities so that if there is an emergency, then a plane must land. And when it's going along the polar route, huge jumbo jets can land in Churchill. The runway is long enough for that. Then when you go through the airport, we got on our bus and we started going into Churchill. And there's this nice paved road and we go along there. And we find out that's the only paved road in Churchill. That was built back in 1970. Queen Elizabeth came on one of her tours of the Commonwealth, and she went to Churchill. And they said, well, the Queen can't come in on one of these, gravel roads. So they built the road from the airport through the main street of downtown, and it ends right at the waterfront, right at Hudson's Bay. The rest of the time you're on a gravel road, which I think it was gravel because there was snow and ice, so couldn't be sure what it was. But anyway, this is just a polar bear that they've set up as a thing. The town has these murals. And as we were coming in along that highway, so many of the buildings had these murals, and I'm just fascinated. These are beautiful. What's this little town doing with all of these beautiful buildings? Well, that's a protest that Churchill has going against the government. Their position is they're not getting all of the support that they need from the government in Manitoba or from the federal government. So they brought an artist in to paint murals wherever she could on these big buildings. They brought her and her team with her, and she painted these beautiful murals. And their position is, look, we were able to bring in an artist and all of her supplies to paint these murals. Why can't you get us what we need here? The supplies that we really need to live here. Now, this one is really quite poignant. The young girl there was actually a resident of Churchill, and she and a friend of hers were out on the river in their boat fishing, and the boat capsized, and she unfortunately drowned. So this is memorial for her. Here's some more of the murals. Churchill is not only, they say, the polar bear capital of the world, it's the beluga whale capital of the world, because in the summer, the beluga whales come in and they give birth, and everybody comes in to see the beluga whales. So that's the summer. Early in the winter is the polar bears, and then in between that, it's one of the best places in the world to see the northern lights, because you can supposed to be able to see them almost 360 nights of the year. So I'm just going to quickly show you some of this one is all painted in the colors of the tundra. And you can see the polar bears and the beluga whales in that mural. They painted anything they could, including the body of this old helicopter. And this is I have to look at this to be able to pronounce it, the Inuksuk. And that's a way that the indigenous people there used to communicate, because there are no roads. You know, how do you tell people what's going on? So they would build these formations. Each one is different, and it has a message to it. So this one, we were told, was a welcome. It says, welcome to Churchill. But there are others that would say, don't go here. This is dangerous. There's danger if you go this way. They did tell us a story about it. I believe it was the Toronto Art Museum, put one of these in the front of the museum. Unfortunately, they chose the wrong one. They chose one that meant death. So nobody would go into the museum. So they had to quickly change that. Now, this is one of the most popular buildings in Churchill, and you may have heard of this. This is the polar bear jail. It's actually the polar bear holding facility. If the bears will not leave, because there are a few stubborn bears that come back into town, and the fireworks finally don't work, the whistles don't work, so they have to capture them. And over there on the side, you can see some of the traps that they use. So if they capture the bears, and the bear already has one strike against it or two strikes, whatever their criteria is, then he gets taken here and he gets locked up until the ice freezes over. And look at the painting there. And there's one of the bears. That's one of the positions. We saw several of them sleeping that way. And there's some of the traps. There were different traps. These are big culverts, and they have a piece of cloth that's been soaked in seal oil, which hangs down in there. And they love to get in there, and then they can't get out. And everybody asked me if I saw the Northern Lights. I saw the Northern Lights. Now, this is the area where we went. It was out near the old base, because the roads that we were on, those are the red lines. At the base, they were doing research on the Aurora Borealis, and they were sending up rockets. So they would have to go out and get the parts of the rockets that fell or anything that didn't get up in the sky. So the base had built all of these roads Now, that's what they tell us they're roads. I mean, don't ask me because we couldn't tell. So these are the way that we went around all of this area. There were 2 areas that were closed. That's just for the bears. So over here in this bottom corner, you'll see there's the Great White Bear Rover Launch. We went out in rovers every day, and I'll show you the rovers here in a minute. So we would go there. Our bus would pull up. The rovers are backed up on it. There's a big ledge there. Our bus is pulled up right behind the rovers. We got out. We took like 3 steps, and we entered in the rover. You don't stay outside. It's like we never walked outside while we were there. They're watching you all the time to make sure there are no bears around, because you cannot see those bears. They will sneak up on you. This is when we were driving around. Churchill is right at the edge of a boreal forest. And these are some of the trees there. And you'll see they're a little unusual. They call them flag trees because on the side where there are no branches, that is facing the Hudson's Bay or the Arctic Ocean. And the winds are so strong there that the branches can't grow on them. This is what it looks like. It's just flat. I mean, it's flat in Texas. It's flat there. Except they've got little lakes or little ponds of water, which will freeze over. And that's what the landscape is like. Now, the polar bears can swim because they spend their time out on the ice. But because of the conditions there, the ice breaks up. There's wind that comes along that will break up the ice. There are the currents that will break it up. So the bears get out and they float around. They get their little island of ice, and then they can float around. So they have to be able to swim in addition to just walking around. So they have big, slightly webbed paws, and I'm going to show you some photos of those paws. They are huge. And there's a hollow layer of fur all over the feet, and that gives them some buoyancy, and it gives them some traction when they're walking on the ice. So they migrate all around these areas, and sometimes the areas where they hunt can be as big as the state of Alaska, or it can be like walking around California twice, and that's where they go during the years. So the migration is over 100 miles on average, and the record for having traveled for swimming is 425 miles in a single swim. So, and that was 9 straight days. So you're not going to outswim one. Now, this one is the sunrise out on the tundra. This was about 8:30 in the morning. And I took that from the window of our rover just to show, yeah, we were up early in the mornings. Now, I'm going to show you the rovers, but I want you to look at the statistics on them, because we're going to see bears with the rovers, and that'll help you have some perspective on how big the bears are when you see them next to these rovers. Now, the rovers are built on airport fire truck chassis. So they are huge. So from the tire base to the top is 14 feet. And then it's tire to tire is 14 feet. The tires are 5 feet tall, 3 feet wide. And you're going to see the back. There's a deck on the back, which has expanded steel so that you can walk out there, and you can look down and you can see the polar bear is underneath you. So this is the inside of one of the rovers. So you see, we had a lot of room in there, and it was warm. The windows, we could open the windows whenever we stopped to see bears. They were very easy to get those up and down. That's what the roads are like. So I was glad that the driver knew where the road was, because I certainly didn't know where it was. Here are some of the rovers lined up after we're out into the preserve. This is a hotel. It's made out of rovers, and it stays out on the tundra out in this reserve. That's not a very good picture because I was pushing the lens on my camera to get that, but I got it. I seriously thought about staying there when I went, but my daughter didn't want to stay in that. She wanted to stay in town. So She's a city girl. So we stayed in the city of Churchill. Now, this is one that people ask me about, especially when they see my photos. They're like, that's not a polar bear. Polar bears are all white. No, they're not. So the polar bears have 2 layers of fur because they have to have that extra layer of fur to keep them warm because it is cold there. So they've got a short undercoat and then they have longer guard hairs. So these hairs appear to be white, but they're actually translucent. So they will reflect whatever is around them. So when you're looking at these photos, you will see some of them that appear to be glowing gold. Others may look gray. Some of them are actually a little bit brown, and there are some white ones, but don't think all polar bears are white because they're not. Another thing which is interesting about the bears, and this is different from other bears, most bears have pink skin under all that fur. Polar bears have black skin. I went to Alaska a few years ago and I was in the Museum of the North and they had an exhibit about all the furs in Alaska. And they had a sample of polar bear fur. And they had the Arctic fox, they had the hair and all of the other things. They said, put your fingers in there and see how it feels, how soft it is. And so most of them were very soft and I could get my fingers way down in there. Then I got to the polar bear. I couldn't get my fingers to the skin on that sample. That hair was so thick. So, of course, they need that to stay warm. Now here's a couple of bears that we saw. When we first arrived, they were both sleeping. You see, one of them is still sleeping. But even when they're sleeping, they will raise their head periodically, like every 5 to 10 minutes, and just kind of look around and go back down. So these have been disturbed as like, oh, look, there's people. We have company. So there, then the second one is starting to wake up, and usually they're sleeping in the willows. So it can be a little difficult to see them. There's one he's looking at us. Got to think about this. Do I want to get up and go see them? And look at that nose. And this one's decided, yeah, maybe I should go over there and see them. So then the second one goes, maybe I should too. So they start walking through the willows toward our rover. And they're always sniffing and smelling. Here, the first one has gotten to our rover. Now, this is the deck on the back of the rover, because whenever we saw the bears and we got close to them, everybody gets up and runs out to the deck so you can really see them. And then we can watch them walk under our rover. There's some footprints, and it's kind of hard to tell how big they are from that photo, but you can really see their footprints. They leave a big print when they go. Now here's another. He's up at our rover and he's taking us in, trying to figure out what we're doing there. We're going to do, Then again, he's looking at us, everybody that's out on the deck. And they just walk around our rover. And they just kind of circling it, and they go under it. And they just, we're having a great time watching the bears.
Will they eat you, give them a chance?
Will they what?
Will they eat you if they give them a chance?
Yes. There haven't been that many people that have been killed by polar bears, but they are recording that. And right after we got back, I read in the paper about a young woman and her baby in Alaska who were attacked and killed by a polar bear. So yes, you don't mess with polar bears. So here, this one is coming right up to the window on the rover. There he's getting up to look at me, and he's looking inside the window, the rover. Then they kind of walk away. Then he decides to circle back. And he's back to the deck again because they're trying to figure out, can we get up to those people? There he is standing next to the rover. I don't think that was on the statistics, but the tires are 5 feet And then this is above the tires. So that's got to be about 8 or 9 feet there.
So he can't get up.
No, he can't get up there. But he's certainly looking.
He's only kind of like, and then we still get up.
No, now our guide was going crazy because, of course, we're all out on that deck. And so some of the people have binoculars, some people have cameras, and she's going crazy. Get back from the edge, and don't let those straps on your binos or your cameras hang over. They'll grab those straps, and it's like, then they'll pull you over, and we're like, okay, we know. But there's, yes, that's what this one was.
Hanging out. How did you get that?
Well, I was on the deck. My daughter took this one. I'm going to show you some of mine. Yeah, my daughter took that. I took the photos, but she was there with her phone taking some. And I was right there by the bear. Where else would I be? And so she's toward the back of the deck. And so she was getting me with the bear, trying to get me with the bear. I just edited to cut me out. But there, look at that. That one is right. He's right in front of me. I could have just reached out and touched him, except I knew better than to do that. But I'll tell you, it was really hard to resist the temptation. Yeah, look at his nose. You see his nose. You think about what other bears look like. They have this nose, and then there's an indentation, kind of like humans have. And then the forehead. Well, polar bears don't have that look. It's just this long, straight nose. Polar bears have the most sophisticated olfactory system of any animal. They can smell their prey from 20 miles away. And that all of that is filled with those olfactory sensors and nerves. Okay, all right. Their hearing and their eyesight is, it's okay. It's similar to ours, but they do have the most sensitive nose, and they can smell their prey from 20 feet away, even 20 miles away, even if it's under 3 feet of snow. And there he is again. So look at the nose. That whole forehead is his nose. Okay, that little hand with the camera lens, that's me. And there he's back looking at me in the window. There he's looking at me again through the window.
Sure he's a he?
We're assuming that you can't tell from looking at them. We assume most of these were males because the females, while polar bears don't hibernate, the females all give birth in December. So about October, they will go into the forest and they will get into a den, and they'll either have a snow den or they'll dig one out. In fact, a lot of the dens they reuse from year to year. And they stay there until December, and then they give birth to the cubs. So since we were there in the first part of November, we assumed that unless they had a cub with them, that it was males. Although we did have an instance where we think we saw a female that didn't have a cub, but that's a long story too. Okay. Now here they go. Once we got the bears there and they're coming up to the rovers, all of the drivers and guides are communicating with each other, so that everybody gets there. So there's this whole line of rovers there. So you saw the photos with the bears around ours. This is the one right behind us. So after the bears finish with us and they decide, well, this is boring, they go back to the other rover. And so you'll be able to see how they interacted with the rover. They were doing the same thing to us that they're doing with these. Yes.
So are those people kind of sticking out of those windows?
Yes. From the windows, and you'll see it's mainly arms with cameras. That's tall enough that the bears can't reach those. The windows come down to open. So the bears aren't really tall enough to get to the people there. Now, if you're on the deck, that's where you have to watch your camera straps and your bino straps. And your hands and arms don't don't go over the edge. So there he is. Our bear did the same thing. I've got photos of him looking in our windows. So you can see how tall he is there. Okay, the tires are 5 feet in diameter. So you can see he's another, what, 3, 4 feet? Yes. Why did they find the what?
The road was so interesting.
They're curious.
Every day.
They're curious. Well, they come into the town and they walk around the town. There was one night as my daughter and I were going to bed, we heard dogs barking right behind our hotel room. And there was something that had those dogs irritated. And we said, oh, maybe there's a bear back there. So we go to the window and we look out. Of course, we can't see anything. But the next morning, someone told us that there were bear tracks. We were on the paved road, which is a long one, but there were bear tracks on a road that was perpendicular to this paved road, which was right across from our hotel. And bear tracks were over there. So we assumed that the bear was probably wandering around town. As long as they don't start bothering people, they kind of leave them alone, because the doors to the buildings in downtown are never locked. So if you're out and you see a polar bear, go to the nearest building, go inside and close the door. And that way they'll leave you, and then call the bear patrol. So the bear patrol comes. All right, so here's another, you can see how tall he is there at the front window. And again, where are all the people? They all came to the front. There are the two of them again outside that rover. So the first one came. Now the second bear is going over. He's going to check out the rover. So then he looks in through the door, and again, see where everybody. We were the same way in our rover. So then the two bears decide to say, what's going to happen? Now, this is something you'll want to remember if you're ever out there and you're hiking through the tundra in the Arctic. You can't, not hunt polar bears. But if you get one, even if you're starving, don't eat it. Because for one thing, they have parasites that will give you trichinosis, which will then kill you. Now, there are some who will eat the polar bear meat. The indigenous people will, but you have to know how to cook it. It has to be very well done in order to eat it. And you never eat the livers, because it's the high vitamin A content in the bear's liver will kill people. So no liver, no polar bear meat. Yeah, and if you get this hypervitaminosis A, you get freaky, deadly skin disease that can cause your hair to fall out and your skin to peel. So don't go there. Okay. Okay, so now here we're just going to watch some play. This is one of the activities that's unique to the Hudson's Bay bears, and this is sparring. Every population of bears has their different behaviors. This is the one that Hudson's Bay is known for. So I'm just going to flip through some of these and you tell me what you think they're doing. Oh, let me see. Oh, you can't see his feet there. Now, here we go. There we go. What are they doing? Do you see the teeth on the bear on top? Oops. Okay, they're not fighting. They're sparring. Why they spar, researchers don't know yet. It could be just to get exercise. It could be just a friendship type of thing. Let's play, let's spar. You never see them hurt another bear. They never hurt one, and you'll see them. Okay, there they go. It looks like they're really biting each other, and they've got long teeth. There they're really going at each other. I saw one bear that had a red spot on his ear that looked like it might have been blood, and that would have been a mistake. That would not have been intentionally drawn blood. Yes. And every few minutes they will stop like this. They just stop. Okay, let's stop. Well, they haven't eaten since July. So they're not that strong. They don't have all of the energy that they would normally have. So they stop and they rest. And then one of them will kind of approach the other and like, you ready to go again? And there they go. When we came upon our first couple of bears, this is what they were doing. In fact, I think these are the first ones that we saw. And we're all like, oh my gosh, they're fighting. Are they going to hurt each other? They're going to kill each other. And it's like, no, they're not. They're just sparring. They're exercising. And look at the color that you see on these. There's a lot of the brown soil there. So remember, their fur is reflecting the light from the surroundings. And I may have more of these than you want to see, but I just was fascinated by the sparring. November. The bears come into Churchill at the end of October, and they leave at about the middle of December. We did. It was still light when we were, I mean, it's not winter yet. It's still autumn. So we had light. We had enough light to get, oh, now here, look at the paws on that bear. It's kind of hard to tell how big they are. Their paw, it would be like this. Their paws are huge, but it's like snowshoes.
You can say these are average size.
I'm sorry?
You can say these are average size. There's not even among the bigger ones. The size is average.
Oh, it's hard to tell in the photos how big they are. I could tell because I was looking at them. I was close to them. And I was reading everything I could about polar bears. They can, yes, they can look golden and be brown. Okay, going to stop and rent now. There they go again. It's like, okay, let's stop. You know, let's rest a few minutes.
It's like when you're in town and you want to go get something to eat in your hotel.
Different at a different restaurant. And again, they picked us up right at the door. They took us to the door of the restaurant. They didn't let us get out. They weren't going to risk having some guests get eaten or by a polar bear. Bad for business, yes. Okay. We still got the best ones coming up, so. Okay, ready to start again. I think there were 16. They kept the groups very small. But there were, I don't know how many groups there were there. There were 3 groups on the plane that we were on to get to Churchill and then coming back. The hotel where we stayed in Winnipeg was filled with different tour groups because we all had the same blue jackets and the same boots, so we all knew each other. So they were taking over the town. This was with Natural Habitat. I like their guides because they're very knowledgeable. Our guide was finishing her master's at University of Manitoba. Oh, now there you can see one of the teeth.
If they haven't eaten since July, how long do they go without eating?
From sometime around July until the bay freezes. And that's usually the end of December. But there's the mercy of nature for that. So, and that's why climate change is impacting the bears so much, because the bay is not freezing over as early as it has in the past.
Here you have.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the next.
And so-
Okay.
So the whole time the bus was like, or the rover was like stopped for 10, 15 minutes. So you get.
Oh, it stopped as long as there was something going on, as long as we wanted him to stop. But we did have one stop. And in fact, I think we were having our lunch. We ate on the rover. We had this soup, salad, sandwiches, that kind of thing. So we had hot food. And our guides and our drivers say, we have a surprise. Would you like to go see it? And we're like, sure. So this is where we started learning about the mama bears. So the mother bears can give birth to from 1 to 4 cubs each year, or every 2 years. They're polygamous and they mate with whoever happens to be in the neighborhood, both the males and the females. After they mate, the fetus doesn't develop right away. It remains, and I'm not going to get into, I mean, I was reading about this. I thought it was fascinating the way they reproduce. But anyway, the fetuses do not start to develop right away. And the female, when she gives birth, she will give birth to the number of cubs that she's going to be able to take care of. So that depends on her health and the circumstances of where she is, how many cubs she has. So there used to be common to see the mother bear with 4 cubs or 3 cubs. Now it's more 1 or 2 cubs. They're not having the litters of bears like they used to, because the mother bear can't sustain having that many cubs.
How long did they live?
I'm sorry.
How long did they live?
The oldest one that's been recorded is 32 years in the wild. Yeah. Okay, so now we start driving again, and this is what we see. There is a mother and her 2 cubs, and we're like, oh my gosh, look at those. They're just the cutest things. So the cubs kind of spot us first. I'm sure the mother spotted us, but she's been through this before. She's seen rovers. It's like, it's no big deal. But this little cub in the front, he's like, oh, look over there. And her mother's telling him, behave yourself. So then the other cub wakes up. So this one in the front, he's really fascinated with us. He keeps looking at us. And mother kind of turns around and says, oh, go back to sleep, And we're saying, oh, please get up. And he's like, no. So finally he does. And so you see, he's got his head on her rump. That's the way they like to sleep. She couldn't have both of them that way. Now, this one, you're probably wondering what that is. At the same time that we're with that mother and her cubs, we look across, there's a pond, an ice pond there. And it took us forever because it looked like 2 rocks over there. But that is a mother and another cub. She's got 1 cub. Well, they wake up, they've had a nap, and mother cub decides they need to move. So she starts walking across this ice pond, and that's probably maybe 100 yards across there. Oh, she yawns because she just woke up, and here they come. But this gets the interest of the mama bear with the 2 cubs. So now they go on alert. And so you can see her, and you can see one of the cubs standing up to watch those other bears come across the ice. Then they're like, they keep coming. They're getting closer to where we are. So there's the mama and the 1 cub still moving along very slowly, just taking their time. Now the mother with the 2 cubs gets a little upset about this, because the mother with 1 cub is walking straight across the ice, and she's going to intersect with the mother with the 2 cubs. And we're watching that. What's going to happen? So the mother with the 2 cubs says, we need to move. So they get up and they start walking away. Then they start running away. She's got two cubs to defend if it should come to that, even though they're probably not going to attack each other. The other mother just has one. So the mother with the one cub just keeps coming right on across. Here's the mother with the two cubs. They go maybe 50 yards or so, and they stop and they turn around and they start watching, very intently watching the other mother bear, who keeps just moving right along. And about this point, she is at the place where the mother with the two cubs had been laying there sleeping, and she just walks right across where they had been. So mother with the two cubs decides we need to get a little farther away. And the mother with the one cub keeps coming. So the two cubs, they start looking again to see what's happening. So now the mother with the one cub is up on the land, and she's coming toward the rover in front of us. And the other are watching very intently. Again, they're watching because now, okay, they're over there with those rovers. What are they going to do with that? So here you can see her with the rover in front of us. The mother bear was really not interested in us at all. So she just kind of walks up to it, sniffs around, maybe walks around up and down the side a couple of times and says, there's nothing here. And so she's ready to go. And so the road in front, she just walks around that rover and goes down the road. Now you can kind of see the cub's foot there. Can you see? You can tell how big that is, and he's just a cub. And so then the mother with the two cubs is looking. Okay, they're going away. That's good. So they just said, "Let's go back where we were sleeping before. That was a really nice place." And so she leads her cubs back to the exact same place that they were before. Now I'm just going to quickly show you some of the other animals that we saw. It depends upon the time of the year you go, what other animals you see. But the polar bears actually will share food if they come across a whale or a big carcass of something. The other polar bears in the area, remember they have great noses, will come up and they'll kind of walk around and they rub noses as a way of kind of saying, can I share your food? And usually the bears say, sure. And so you may find a group of them all eating off one carcass at that time. They also will share with the Arctic foxes, because the bears only want the blubber or the fat. They don't eat the meat. The Arctic fox only eat the meat. They're not interested in the fat or the blubber. So they share anytime there's a kill. It's an Arctic fox. Now he's still dark, but you can see him against the snow. And there he is. He's kind of turning around to look at us. This is not mine, because when we saw the foxes, they were still brown. But this was one of the other guides shared this photo with us after it had turned white. Now, there's the fox again. There's a snowy owl. That's the biggest owl in the world. And they like to get on top of rocks and look around because there are a lot of rocks in Churchill. This one happened to land on the top of a tree. These are this one is also hard for me to say. Ptarmigans, yes. I've got a lot of these simply because they were hard to see in the photos. But there's one we actually made a stop at one place to look at some bears, and these descended on us. There must have been 100 or 200 that came right around our rover. And they're beautiful little birds. They're about the size of pigeons. But if you look at their legs now, while they're wearing their winter garb, they have feathers going all the way down to their feet. But you'll see they're also, and I process these in different ways because I was trying to get them where you can see them well, because they blended into the snow so well. Yeah. Here you can see there's a pink tinge to their feathers, like flamingos. That comes from the food they eat. The bark and the leaves on those willows have that pink little red tinge. So these will pick up that pink in their feathers. Okay, and then, okay, we've talked about how they can swim, and I think we've already done that. So here's another one. I think these are just some photos that I took. So I don't, yeah, I just gave you the two stories. But anyway, it was very interesting. We saw some other behaviors that was just fascinating. So does anybody have any questions?
How big are the babies when they're born?
I don't know when they're born, but they're small. All I know is they're very small, and they don't come out of the den until they're big enough that the mother can get them out. I think they're about 2 months or so before they come out, and then they will stay in the den for 6 to 7 months until the cubs get big enough to really be to eat, and the mother doesn't eat during that time. Oh, now this is one. The bear in the back, he's going to take a nap, but he found this place with some seaweed. So he is just moving that seaweed around to make himself a comfortable bed. And there he got it all the way, just the way he wanted it. And this one looks like the one at the polar bear jail. That's splotting. That position is called splotting, and they'll just walk up and all of a sudden down they go. But you see cats and dogs do the same thing. So there you got a polar bear that's splotting. There's another one of them splotting. Now, this is why sometimes they can be hard to see because of all of the rocks in the area. So until he raised his head, we thought he was a rock. The rest of those are rocks.
Bears and foxes are safe around each other.
Do they have what?
Bears and foxes are safe around each other.
I'm sorry.
Bears and foxes are the same around each other.
Do bears and foxes fight?
No, they have a symbiotic relationship because they will share food. They don't eat the same thing. The foxes will eat the meat. The bears eat the blubber. Yes.
What is the recommended time in the year that's best to go?
Late October to maybe the middle of December. And if you want to see the other animals, the earlier you go, the more of the other animals you'll see. The later you go, the less likely you are to see the others. See this big rock back here. This is the Canadian Shield, goes through Churchill. They're huge rocks there, and they're the oldest rocks known on Earth, and they're about 4.5 billion years old. And the bears love to walk around in those rocks because they can move around without being seen. Okay, and then the last thing here, we have to make the pitch for global warming. So this one says there are only 26,000 bears left in the wild. The other was, I think, was a total number. So if any of you are interested, save the polar bears. They're beautiful animals. And these are just some more photos. I couldn't resist. I took way too many photos. Because everyone I saw, I said, oh, this is the best. No, this is the best. This is the best. So I just went wild. That's why we have digital cameras, right?
They're the same kind of birds again. The same kind of birds that are there in Alaska. Alaska has a video.
Some of them will be the same. There are bald eagles there. What was the other? We didn't see one. We just saw that snowy owl. I think that was the only bird that we saw.
Do you know how fast they run?
No, I don't, but they can outrun humans. So that's why you get inside, you stay away from them because you can't outrun them.
40 miles an hour.
Well, if you're in another part of the country where there are bears, you always get instructed on how to protect yourself and was make yourself bigger, raise your arms, make noise. You've got to scare the bear away. These don't get scared away. I mean, you can raise your arms and you can jump up and down. You can do everything. You're not bigger than that bear. No. So they're not going to be scared of you.
So what's their predator?
They don't have one.
Man.
Yeah, they're the apex predator in the Arctic. So
The Northern Lights, you were able to see the Northern Lights when you were there? Did you go out?
we could have, but our guide said if the northern lights appeared, they'd let us know, but they didn't appear while we were there. And then the last night and the last day we had a blizzard, so nobody was seeing them yet. So that's why I showed you the store, because it was the only northern lights we saw.
How many days were you there?
We were there, trying to remember because I spent that time in Winnipeg. We were there about 4 or 5 days. Yeah. Yes. It's an interesting little town.
Unfortunately, we have to clear out at the end of the next.
Yeah.
10 to 15 minutes. So the library is going to close. So thank you, Mary. Yes.
Great job. Great job. Well, we hope everybody will come on to lunch, whatever our meal is, and thank you very much. And don't forget all the activities coming up this coming week. Please try and join us and look at other things that you can get involved with in the club. And we'd like to invite any of our guests if you're interested. Edward is our membership chair, and he'll be very happy to take your membership form. Edward, how much is it now to join? You join in?
We haven't set next year's. Right now, it's $35.
I have one more thing. Does that include FFI?
Yes.
So there will be an increase next year, but for right now, it's $35. And that just takes you to the end of the year?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll hope to see you later.
Okay, I got one more thing.
Okay.
I've got to go try. So I think somebody is trying to reach in there and see on the name.
I can pull mine out. That's put it on. Nice.